The medical room was cold and white. Varric sat in the corner, his body shaking even though the temperature was normal. The doctors said he was safe now. They said the war was over. But Varric knew the truth. The war would never be over. Not in his mind, an investigator walked into the room. His name was Kelvin, and he carried a recording device. He wanted to know what happened on Earth. He wanted to know why the mighty Crethean Empire ran away from a primitive planet. Varric looked at the device and felt his stomach turn. He did not want to remember, but Kelvin insisted. The Empire needed to understand. So Varric began to speak, his voice quiet and broken. It started 5 months ago. Varric was a commander then, proud and strong. He stood on the bridge of the warship Dominion, looking at the blue planet below. Earth, they called it. A small world with a young species called humans. The Crethean Empire had conquered 17 species before humans. 17 worlds that bowed to their power. Earth would be number 18. The intelligence reports made it seem easy. Humans had basic technology. They had primitive weapons. They were divided into hundreds of small nations that fought among themselves. Science officer Xylith showed Varric the analysis. Humans were classified as pacification level 2. That meant minimal resistance expected, maybe a few small battles, then surrender. It always happened that way. Captain Thorax laughed when he saw the human military bases. Their aircraft looked like toys. Their ships were slow and clumsy. Their weapons used chemical explosives instead of plasma. The crew joked about it. Some bet on how quickly the humans would surrender. Most said 3 days. Varric thought maybe 5. Admiral Krex gave the order. Send the standard message. Surrender or face destruction. Varric watched the communication officer broadcast the ultimatum to every human frequency. Then they waited for the response. The response was chaos. Some human nations wanted to negotiate. Others wanted to fight. They argued with each other on open channels. They could not agree on anything. It was exactly what the intelligence reports predicted. Divided and weak. Varric ordered the first strikes. Plasma beams fell from the sky like rain. Military bases turned to ash in seconds. Coastal cities burned. The humans tried to fight back with their missiles, but Crethean shields stopped them easily. In the first hour, they destroyed most of human military power. Then Varric ordered the ground forces to land. Dropships descended through the smoke. Thousands of Crethean soldiers marched into human cities. They expected surrender broadcasts. They expected white flags. They expected crying and begging. What they got was silence. In Seoul, a human city in a place called Korea, Colonel Jiho Park watched the sky burn. He was a military commander, but his base was gone. His orders were gone. His government was falling apart. He stood in the ruins with a few hundred soldiers and thousands of terrified civilians. Park knew they could not win a normal war. The aliens had better weapons, better armor, better everything. Fighting them head-on would be suicide, so he made a choice. He would not fight like a soldier anymore. He would fight like a shadow. He gathered his people in the subway tunnels beneath the destroyed city. He told them the truth. They could not save Korea. They probably could not save Earth, but they could make the aliens pay for every inch of ground. They could make them afraid. Park divided his group into small teams. Each team had a simple job. Watch the aliens. Learn their patterns. Find their weaknesses. And when the moment was right, strike hard and disappear. Meanwhile, in an underground shelter, Dr. Minji Kang gathered other scientists and engineers. She was an aerospace engineer, but now she had a new purpose. She studied the wreckage of alien weapons. She examined their armor. She tested their technology. Minji realized something important. The aliens were advanced, but they were not prepared for human creativity. They built their weapons for fighting other advanced species. They never imagined fighting people who would use anything and everything as a weapon. She started designing new weapons from old parts. Car batteries could become bombs. Fertilizer could become explosives. Cell phone signals could trigger traps. The aliens had better technology, but humans had desperation. And desperation made people dangerous. Back on the Dominion, Varric received the first occupation reports. The major cities were secure. Resistance was minimal. Everything was going according to plan. He sent a message to Admiral Krex. Earth would surrender within a week. But that night something changed. A Crethean patrol in Seoul disappeared. 20 soldiers went into the ruins to clear buildings. None of them came back. Search teams found nothing. No bodies, no signs of battle. Just empty streets and silence. Varix ordered more patrols. They needed to maintain control. But the next night, 2 more patrols vanished. Then 3. The pattern was always the same. Soldiers entered human territory and never returned. Captain Thorax suggested it was just confusion. Cities were big. Maybe the patrols got lost. Maybe their communication devices failed. But Varix saw the fear in his crew's eyes. They knew something was wrong. On the 5th day, they found the bodies. A search drone discovered them in an abandoned building. All 20 soldiers from the first patrol. They were arranged in a circle facing outward. Their weapons were gone. Their armor was stripped away. And carved into the wall above them was a message in Krethian language. It said, "We are coming for you." Science officer Xylith examined the scene. He said the soldiers died from human weapons, bullets and knives, primitive tools. But what disturbed him was the precision. Someone had studied Krethian anatomy. Someone knew exactly where to cut to cause maximum pain before death. Varix ordered the message destroyed. He told the crew it was just propaganda. The humans were trying to scare them. But late that night, alone in his quarters, Varix looked at the images again. He saw something in those arranged bodies, something deliberate, something intelligent. For the first time since arriving at Earth, Varix felt a small seed of doubt. Maybe the intelligence reports were wrong. Maybe humans were not as primitive as they seemed. Maybe this would not be as easy as conquering the other 17 worlds. In the Sol tunnels, Colonel Park gathered his team leaders. They reported their first success. 20 alien soldiers eliminated, weapons captured, armor salvaged. More importantly, they learned how the aliens thought, how they moved, how they communicated. Park told them this was just the beginning. The aliens thought they had won. They thought humans would surrender. But surrender was not in the plan. The plan was simple. Make them bleed, make them scared, make them wish they never came to Earth. One of his soldiers asked if they could actually win. Park was honest. Probably not. Earth had lost most of its military in the first day. Billions of people were dead or dying. The aliens controlled the sky and the sea. But winning was not the goal anymore. Survival was the goal, and if they had to become monsters to survive, then that is what they would do. In his medical room, Varix stopped talking. His hands were shaking again. Kelvan, the investigator, waited patiently. He could see the fear in Varix's eyes. This was just the first week of the occupation. Just the beginning. Varix looked at Kelvin and whispered something. His voice was so quiet that the recording device barely caught it. He said, "We thought we were hunting prey. We did not know we were waking up predators." 3 weeks had passed since the invasion began. Varix stood in the command center of the Dominion, staring at casualty reports. The numbers made no sense. Krethian forces were losing soldiers every day, not in big battles, not in glorious combat. They were disappearing in 1s and 2s, ambushed, trapped, killed by enemies they never saw. Captain Thorax suggested pulling back from human cities, consolidate forces, hold strong positions, but Admiral Krex refused. The Empire did not retreat. The Empire did not show weakness. So the patrols continued, and the soldiers kept dying. What Varix did not understand was how humans fought. They did not follow any military rules the Krethians knew. They did not form battle lines. They did not challenge enemies face to face. They hit and ran. They struck from shadows. They used the ruined cities like weapons. In Sol, Colonel Park perfected his tactics. His teams learned every tunnel, every alley, every hiding spot. They moved through the ruins like ghosts. Krethian patrols would turn a corner and find the street empty. Then explosions would tear through their ranks from windows and rooftops. Park's people used everything as weapons. Old cars became rolling bombs. Building rubble became ambush points. Even children helped by watching alien movements and reporting back through hidden radio networks. Dr. Minji Kang provided the resistance with new tools. She designed bombs that could pierce Krethian armor. She modified human rifles to fire captured alien ammunition. She created chemical mixtures that burned through alien metal. Every day brought new innovations born from desperation. But the true terror began when humans started using tactics the Krethians thought were impossible. Lieutenant Daeho Shin was a fighter pilot. His base was destroyed in the first day of invasion. His squadron was scattered. His commanders were dead. But he still had aircraft, old training planes. Civilian jets, helicopters. None of them could fight Krethian fighters in the sky. So Deho came up with a new plan. If he could not fight them, he would crash into them. He gathered 19 other pilots, all volunteers, all knowing they would not come back. They loaded their aircraft with explosives, fuel tanks, anything that would burn. Then they waited for the right moment. The moment came when Krethian air forces gathered at a landing zone outside Seoul. Dozens of fighter craft. Hundreds of soldiers. Supply ships. It was a perfect target. Deho led his squadron in at dawn. The Krethian radar detected them. The aliens sent fighters to intercept, but the humans did not turn away. They did not try to dodge. They flew straight at their targets. Krethian pilots tried to shoot them down. Some human aircraft exploded in the air, but others got through. Deho's plane smashed into a Krethian command ship at full speed. The explosion consumed 20 alien fighters. Other human pilots followed. They crashed into parked aircraft, into supply depots, into troop formations. In 20 seconds, the landing zone turned into an inferno. Half the Krethian Air Force in Korea was destroyed. 300 soldiers died. Dozens of supply ships burned. On the Dominion, Varix listened to the recordings from the battle. What shocked him was not the tactic itself. It was the human voices. Deho and his pilots were not screaming. They were not panicking. They were calm, almost peaceful. They accepted death like it was nothing. Science officer Xylith explained that Krethian species abandoned suicide tactics thousands of years ago. Evolution made them value individual survival above everything else. The idea of deliberately dying for tactical advantage was unthinkable. But humans were different. Humans could look at certain death and choose it willingly. That made them unpredictable. That made them terrifying. The attacks came from other directions too. Captain Haiwan Lee commanded a submarine fleet. Most of her ships were destroyed in the first day. But 3 submarines survived. Nuclear-powered vessels that could stay underwater for months. The Krethians controlled Earth's surface and sky. But they knew almost nothing about ocean warfare. Their shields worked in air and space. But water was different, dense, unpredictable, hard to scan through. Haiwan used this weakness. She positioned her submarines beneath Krethian capital ships floating on the ocean. Then she fired torpedoes straight up. The explosions tore through ship hulls. Water flooded in. The mighty vessels that could survive space combat sank like stones. 3 capital ships went down in 2 weeks. Hundreds of Krethian crew drowned. The aliens tried to hunt the submarines, but their weapons could not track properly underwater. Haiwan's ships moved like predators, striking and vanishing into the deep. The psychological impact was worse than the physical damage. Krethian soldiers started refusing to board ships near water. They had nightmares about drowning. Their species evolved on a desert planet. Deep water was primal fear for them. Then came the broadcasts. A young woman named Sora Choi was a computer programmer before the invasion. She survived the Seoul bombardment and joined the resistance. But she did not fight with guns. She fought with code. Sora discovered that Krethian communication networks had weak encryption. They never expected primitive humans to crack their systems. So she got inside. She listened to their orders, read their reports, learned their language. Then she started her own broadcasts. She sent images to Krethian devices, pictures from human history, wars, massacres, torture. She showed them what humans did to each other when they fought. She wanted the aliens to understand what kind of species they were facing. But she also sent something worse. She sent videos of Krethian soldiers being killed, close-up footage, detailed recordings. She wanted them to see exactly how their comrades died. She wanted them to imagine themselves in those moments. The effect was devastating. Krethian soldiers started having panic attacks. They saw human faces in shadows. They heard voices in empty rooms. Their military psychologists had never dealt with combat trauma before. The Empire's wars usually ended too quickly for soldiers to develop fear. Varix ordered the communication network shut down and rebuilt. But the damage was done. His soldiers were scared. Not just worried, actually terrified. They volunteered for ship duty instead of ground assignments. They begged to be sent anywhere except human territories. Captain Thorax confronted Varix in private. He said what everyone was thinking, but nobody wanted to say out loud. The mission was failing, not because humans had better weapons, but because they had better warriors. Varix ordered interrogation of captured human fighters. He needed to understand what made them so fearless. The first prisoner was a young man, barely 20 years old. Burned, broken, but still alive. The interrogator asked him why humans fought so hard, why they accepted suicide missions, why they refused to surrender. The young man smiled through bloody teeth. He said humans had a saying, "Better to die on your feet than live on your knees." He said his people would rather burn the whole planet than let aliens rule it. He said Earth would be humanity's grave or humanity's fortress, but it would never be a Crethian prize. Then he died, not from injuries. He bit down on a poison capsule hidden in his tooth. He chose death over giving any more information. That night, Varix could not sleep. He kept thinking about that smile, that defiance. He realized something horrible. Humans were not fighting to win. They were fighting to make victory so costly that it would not matter. In his medical room, Varix trembled as he told this story to Kelvin. The investigator asked if that was when Varix understood they would lose. Varix shook his head. He did not understand yet. Not really. He still thought they could win through superior firepower, through orbital bombardment. Through sheer force, he was wrong, and learning how wrong would break him completely. 2 months into the occupation, the war changed from conflict to nightmare. Varix received reports that made no sense, reports that described things no civilized species should do. But humans were doing them, and they were doing them with cold efficiency. Dr. Minji Kang's underground laboratory had grown. What started as a few desperate engineers became a weapons development program. They studied captured Crethian soldiers, alive and dead. They learned alien biology, found weaknesses, created horrors. The first biological weapon targeted Crethian breathing. Humans discovered that alien lungs processed oxygen differently. A modified virus, harmless to humans, caused Crethian respiratory systems to shut down slowly, painfully. It spread through air ducts in occupied buildings. Crethian soldiers started dying in their sleep, gasping, choking. Their medical teams found no cure. They tried filters, protective suits. Nothing worked. The virus kept evolving. Minji's team made sure of that. Every time the aliens adapted, humans released a new version. Then came the sonic weapons. Crethian hearing was more sensitive than human hearing. They could detect sounds humans could not. Minji weaponized this advantage against them. Her team built devices that emitted frequencies that drove aliens mad. The sounds caused pain, confusion, hallucinations. Crethian patrols would enter certain areas and start screaming, clawing at their heads, attacking each other. Human resistance fighters watched from hiding spots as aliens destroyed themselves. No bullets needed, no bombs, just sound. But the worst weapons were the nanotech swarms. Minji discovered that Crethian armor had microscopic gaps for cooling, gaps small enough for tiny machines. She built billions of nanobots programmed to enter those gaps, to corrode, to destroy. An alien soldier could be walking one moment, then his armor would start falling apart, piece by piece, plate by plate. Eventually it would reach his skin. The nanobots did not stop at armor. Science officer Xylith analyzed these weapons with growing horror. Each one showed deep understanding of Crethian biology. These were not random attacks. These were surgical strikes designed for maximum suffering. The humans were not just fighting. They were conducting experiments, learning, adapting. Colonel Park's tactics evolved too. His guerrilla fighters became hunters. They stopped just killing Crethian soldiers. They started taking them alive, capturing them, studying them. A Crethian patrol would disappear. Days later, their bodies would be found, arranged carefully, cut precisely. Park's people were mapping alien anatomy, finding nerve clusters, pressure points, ways to cause pain without causing death. It was not cruelty for its own sake. It was tactical. Every captured soldier taught humans something new. Every dissection revealed another weakness. Park knew this knowledge would spread through the resistance, make every human fighter more effective. But the Crethians did not see tactics. They saw torture, they saw monsters, and they were not wrong. Varix tried to stop the psychological collapse of his forces. He ordered stricter patrols, better equipment, more training. Nothing helped. His soldiers were breaking. They refused to go into human territories alone. They demanded constant air support. They shot at shadows. Then came the nuclear incident. Private Junho Kim was 19 years old. He joined the resistance after his family died in the first bombardment. He was small, quick, good at sneaking. Park used him as a scout. One day, Junho discovered something valuable. A Krithian command center hidden in what used to be a shopping mall. It controlled military operations across entire regions. Destroying it would cripple alien coordination, but it was too heavily guarded for a normal attack. Park considered options. Artillery would not penetrate the shields. Airstrikes were impossible without aircraft. A ground assault would cost hundreds of lives and probably fail. Junho volunteered for a different approach. He knew where humans had hidden nuclear weapons. Small tactical devices meant for destroying bunkers. He could carry one inside his backpack. Walk it into the command center disguised as a refugee. Detonate it manually. Park refused at first. Junho was young, brave, valuable, but Junho insisted. He said someone had to do it. And he was the smallest, the least suspicious, the best chance of success, so Park agreed. They prepared the weapon. Junho memorized the building layout. He practiced his cover story. He said goodbye to his few remaining friends. Then he walked toward the alien lines. Krithian guards stopped him at the checkpoint. They scanned him, but the bomb was shielded. Designed to avoid detection, they saw a scared refugee, a boy looking for food. They let him pass. Junho walked through the command center. He saw hundreds of aliens working, planning, coordinating attacks that would kill thousands more humans. He felt no hesitation, no fear, only purpose. He found the central operations room, placed his backpack on the floor, armed the weapon. Then he activated his radio one last time. His final transmission reached Sora's network. She broadcasted across every frequency. Krithian and human alike heard Junho's last words. He said, "This is for my family, for my world, for everyone you killed. We will take you all with us. Every single one of you." The explosion vaporized the building. 3,000 Krithian soldiers died instantly. 10,000 more were wounded. The entire command structure for the region was destroyed. On the Dominion, Varix watched the explosion from orbit. He saw the mushroom cloud rise, felt the radiation spike, read the casualty reports with shaking hands. Captain Thorax stood beside him. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, Thorax said what they both knew. Humans had just demonstrated willingness to use nuclear weapons in close quarters, to kill themselves along with their enemies. No rational species did that, but humans were not rational. Not anymore. The invasion had pushed them past rationality, past survival instinct, past everything the Krithians understood. Humans had become living weapons, willing to die if it meant taking aliens with them. Varix ordered his ships to pull back from major cities. He tried to minimize contact with human forces, but it was too late. The damage was done. Not to infrastructure, not to military capability. To morale, Krithian soldiers started refusing orders. They claimed illness, injury, anything to avoid ground duty. The medical bays filled with troops suffering psychological collapse, nightmares, panic attacks, fear so deep they could not function. Science officer Xylith compiled a report. It analyzed human warfare from a biological perspective. His conclusion was terrifying. Humans evolved as pursuit predators. They could track prey for days, exhaust it, wear it down. They had patience, endurance, and most frightening of all, they could suppress their fear response when necessary. Krithians evolved as ambush predators. Quick strikes, fast victories. Their biology could not handle prolonged conflict, could not process constant threat, could not adapt to enemies who embraced death as a tactic. The report recommended immediate withdrawal. Not because humans would win militarily, but because the war was destroying Krithian forces psychologically. Soldiers who survived Earth would never recover. They would spread their trauma throughout the Empire. Admiral Krex refused to read the report. He called it cowardice, defeatism. He ordered intensified attacks, total occupation, complete extermination if necessary. But in his quarters alone, Varix read Xylith's report 3 times. He understood every word, agreed with every conclusion, and felt hope die inside him. They were not fighting a war anymore. They were fighting humanity's extinction, and humanity had decided to make that extinction so costly that no one would survive to claim victory. In his medical room, Varix stopped talking. His whole body shook. Kelvin offered water, but Varix could not hold the cup. His hands trembled too much. Kelvin asked if that was the worst of it. If that was when things turned. Varix laughed. A broken, horrible sound, he said no. That was just when they realized what humans were. The real horror came when humans showed them what they could become. 4 months into the occupation, Admiral Krex made his final decision. If humans could not be conquered, they would be exterminated. Every human, every city, every trace of their species would be burned from existence. He ordered the fleet to prepare for planetary bombardment, not targeted strikes. Total bombardment. They would glass the entire surface, turn Earth into a dead rock. It was the only way to stop the nightmare. Barracks received the order with mixed feelings. Part of him was relieved. The war would end. His soldiers would stop dying, stop going insane. They could leave this cursed world behind, but part of him felt shame. The Crethean Empire had never exterminated a species before. They conquered, ruled, integrated. Total genocide was what primitive species did, what monsters did. Captain Thorax tried to make him feel better. He said humans brought this on themselves. They refused to surrender, refused to be reasonable. They chose extinction over submission. This was their choice. Varix wanted to believe that. But he could not. The bombardment was scheduled for the next day. The fleet moved into position. Weapons charged. Targeting systems locked onto every population center, every resistance hideout, every place humans might survive. Then the humans showed they had one more surprise. It started with radar signatures. Dozens of them, rising from hidden locations across Earth. Small craft, moving fast, heading toward the Crethean fleet. At first, Varix thought they were missiles, but sensors showed life signs. Pilots. Humans were flying these craft. Ships that should not even reach orbit were somehow climbing through the atmosphere. Captain Hyewan Lee led the attack. After months of submarine warfare, she volunteered for something bigger, something impossible. She gathered 30 volunteers, engineers, mechanics, anyone who could fly. They had a mission that everyone knew was suicide. Human scientists had been working in secret, taking civilian spacecraft, cargo haulers, tourist shuttles, retrofitting them with military systems, nuclear weapons, anything that could damage a capital ship. The ships were garbage by Crethean standards, barely space-worthy. No shields, no real weapons, just engines and bombs and pilots with nothing left to lose. Huan's fleet launched at dawn. Crethean fighters moved to intercept. It should have been a slaughter. And it was. But not the way Varix expected. The human pilots did not try to fight. They just flew. Straight at their targets, dodging, weaving. Using maneuvers that no sane pilot would attempt. Spins that should have killed them. Accelerations that should have crushed their bodies. Crethean fighters shot down half of them. But half was not enough. 15 human ships broke through. Huan aimed her craft at Admiral Krex's flagship. She saw the point defense systems tracking her, felt her ship taking hits, systems failing. Her last transmission was calm, almost happy. She said this was for Earth, for humanity, for everyone who died believing their world could be free. Then she crashed into the flagship's engine section at full speed. The nuclear warhead detonated on impact. The explosion tore through 3 decks, crippled the main reactor, set off secondary explosions throughout the ship. Other human pilots followed her example. They crashed into capital ships, into orbital platforms, into supply depots, each one taking a piece of the Crethean fleet with them. The battle lasted 12 minutes. When it ended, the Crethean fleet had lost 5 capital ships, 15 support vessels, 2 orbital weapons platforms, thousands of crew, and their confidence. But the damage went deeper than ships and soldiers. Humans had just proved they could threaten Crethean homeworlds. Those retrofitted civilian craft had reached orbit, had penetrated fleet defenses, had struck capital ships. If humans could do that with garbage ships, what could they do with real warships? What could they do if they survived long enough to develop better technology? What could they do if they ever left their solar system? On the ground, Colonel Park watched the battle through telescopes. He saw the explosions in orbit, knew what they meant, knew people he cared about just died, but he also knew their sacrifice worked. He activated every resistance cell, every hidden fighter, every civilian with a weapon. He gave the order for simultaneous uprisings across the planet. If the aliens were distracted in space, humans would strike on ground. The coordination was impossible by Crethean understanding. They could not comprehend how a species without telepathy could organize so perfectly. They did not understand human communication, human culture, The power of shared purpose. In Seoul, Park's forces emerged from tunnels and ruins. They hit Krethian positions from every direction, used every tactic they had learned, every weapon Minji had built, every technique that 4 months of war had taught them. The aliens fought back, but their hearts were not in it. They were exhausted, traumatized, terrified. Many retreated without firing a shot. Some surrendered. A few even deserted, stealing ships to escape Earth entirely. Captain Thorax led a ground force trying to hold Seoul's occupation center. But humans surrounded them. Cut off escape routes. Used the sonic weapons that drove Krethians mad. Released the biological agents that attacked alien lungs. Thorax ordered his troops to fight to the last. But they could not. The fear was too strong. The psychological damage too deep. One by one they broke, ran, died. Thorax died in the rubble of a collapsed building. Killed by an improvised explosive. His last words reached Varix through their communication link. He said humans were not warriors. They were nightmares given form. He said the Empire should have left them alone. Then the transmission cut off. Varix sat on the bridge of the Dominion. Around him, officers reported disasters. Ground forces collapsing, ships damaged, soldiers refusing orders, the entire occupation falling apart. Admiral Krex, wounded in Hyoen's attack, ordered retreat. Pull all forces back. Abandon ground positions. Withdraw to minimum safe distance. They would try bombardment from further out. But even he knew it would not work, because humans had proved something. They had demonstrated that even total extermination would not be quick. Would not be clean. Humans would fight back, would make the aliens pay, would ensure enough humans survived somewhere to seek revenge. Science Officer Xylith delivered his final analysis. He said humans had achieved strategic deterrence. Not through military victory, not through superior technology, but through demonstrated willingness to ensure mutual destruction. If the Krethians tried to exterminate humanity, humans would make sure some survived. In hidden colonies, in deep space, in places the Empire could never find, and those survivors would dedicate their existence to revenge, to making the Krethians suffer, to hunting them across the galaxy until both species were extinct. The Empire could win, could kill billions of humans, could burn their world, but they could not kill them all, and the ones who survived would be the most dangerous, the most dedicated, the most willing to sacrifice everything for vengeance. Varix understood, finally, completely. They had not been fighting a war. They had been starting a blood feud that would last generations. The only winning move was not to play. He sent a message to Admiral Krex, recommended full withdrawal. Leave Earth, leave humans alone. Mark their space as forbidden. Never return. For once, Krex agreed. The fleet began preparations for departure. Ground forces evacuated, ships disengaged. Within days, the Krethian Empire was gone from Earth's orbit. They left behind millions of dead, cities in ruins, a planet scarred by war. But they also left behind humans, bloodied but unbroken, defeated but not destroyed. In Seoul, Colonel Park stood in the ruins and watched the alien ships leave. He knew they won, not through strength, not through technology, but through stubbornness, through refusal to accept any outcome except freedom or death. In his medical room, Varix finished this part of the story. His voice was barely a whisper. Kelvin asked if that was when the nightmares started. Varix nodded. But he said the nightmares were not the worst part. The worst part was knowing humans were still out there, still alive, still advancing, and someday they would leave their world. Enter the galaxy, encounter the Krethian Empire again, and when that day came, humanity would remember. 15 years had passed since the Krethian fleet left Earth. 15 years since the invasion that broke an empire. Varix sat in his medical room, the same white walls surrounding him that had been his prison since returning home. The nightmares never stopped. Every night he saw human faces, heard human voices, felt the terror of those final days on Earth. The doctors said he had severe trauma, that his mind was damaged beyond repair. They were right, but Varix was not alone. Thousands of soldiers who survived Earth suffered the same fate. They filled medical facilities across the Krethian Empire, a generation of warriors broken by a species they were supposed to conquer easily. The political consequences were worse than the psychological ones. Admiral Krex faced tribunal for the disaster. The Empire lost 60% of invasion forces, thousands of ships, millions of credits, All for nothing. Earth remained independent. Humans remained alive. Krex defended his decisions, said humans were unpredictable, irrational, impossible to fight using normal military doctrine. But the tribunal did not care. They stripped him of rank, exiled him, made him a warning to other commanders. Never underestimate your enemy. The Empire changed after Earth. They stopped expansion, consolidated territory, built defenses. The military academies added new courses. Human warfare tactics, psychological warfare, asymmetric combat. Everything they learned from the nightmare. Young soldiers studied what happened on Earth like it was ancient history. But to Varix it was yesterday. Would always be yesterday. The memories did not fade. They grew stronger, more vivid. More terrible. Kelvin, the investigator, came to see Varix regularly over the years, recording his testimony, documenting the war, building a complete picture of what happened. Today's visit was different, though. Kelvin seemed nervous. He told Varix there was news from Earth. Important news. Concerning news, Varix felt his chest tighten. His breathing became difficult. Just the mention of Earth triggered panic. But he needed to know. He asked Kelvin to continue. Kelvin explained that human civilization recovered faster than predicted. Much faster. 15 years ago, Earth was in ruins. Cities destroyed. Billions dead. Technology set back decades. The Empire expected humans to spend generations rebuilding, but humans did not just rebuild. They advanced. The war taught them lessons, made them stronger, united them. The fractured nations became a single government, a planetary alliance, United Earth Coalition. They poured resources into military development, space technology, weapons research. Everything focused on one goal, making sure no alien species ever invaded again, making sure they could defend themselves, or strike back. Then 3 months ago, human sensors detected something impossible, ships moving faster than light. The technology breakthrough came sooner than anyone expected. Humans achieved FTL travel. Varix felt cold spreading through his body. FTL meant humans could leave their solar system, could explore, could expand, could encounter other species, could find the Creathian Empire. Kelvin continued. The first human exploration fleet was detected at the edge of Creathian space 2 weeks ago. 3 ships, not warships, scientific vessels, exploration craft, but armed. Always armed. The Creathian High Command debated responses. Some wanted to attack immediately, destroy the ships before they could report back, eliminate the threat while it was small. Others argued for caution, said attacking would trigger exactly what they feared, would start another war, would bring human vengeance down on them. The debate continued. The military wanted action. The politicians wanted safety. Nobody could agree. So they sent Kelvin to interview Varix again, to ask the one Creathian who truly understood humans what they should do. Varix laughed, that broken, horrible sound that came from deep trauma. He asked if the Empire learned nothing, if they remembered nothing. He told Kelvin what would happen if they attacked. Humans would come, not with 3 ships, with thousands. They would bring their biological weapons, their sonic devices, their nuclear warheads, their willingness to die. But more than that, they would bring their memory. Humans never forgot, never forgave. The survivors of Earth taught their children about the invasion, about the bombs that fell from the sky, about the aliens who tried to conquer them. Those children grew up knowing their world almost died, knowing billions of their people were killed, knowing that somewhere in the galaxy was a species that wanted them extinct. Varix said if the Empire attacked those exploration ships, they would validate every human fear, prove that Creathians were still a threat, unite humanity in purpose, turn them from explorers into crusaders. He told Kelvin to deliver a message to High Command. Let the humans pass. Do not engage. Do not provoke. Do not give them any reason to remember the war, because humans who remembered would be worse than the humans who fought. They would be organized, prepared, advanced, and absolutely determined to ensure no species ever threatened Earth again. Kelvin asked if Varix thought humans wanted revenge. If they planned to attack, Varix said he did not know. Nobody knew. That was what made them terrifying. Humans were unpredictable. Could be peaceful explorers or merciless warriors. The Empire would not know until too late. But he knew one thing for certain. If the Creathians started another war, they would not survive it. The humans they fought 15 years ago were desperate, divided, using primitive weapons. The humans exploring the galaxy now were united, advanced, ready. They built their entire civilization around one principle: never be vulnerable again. Never let aliens threaten their home. Varix told Kelvin that humans were not warriors. They were something worse. They were survivors. And survivors did whatever necessary to keep surviving. He told Kelvin to tell High Command to forget about conquest. Forget about expansion. Forget about the Empire's pride. Just leave humans alone. Because if they did not, if they tried again, humans would not stop until every Creathian world burned. They would chase them across the galaxy, hunt them through generations, make the entire species regret the day they heard the word Earth. Kelvin left with this message. Varix sat alone in his white room. Outside, he heard other patients screaming, other survivors reliving their nightmares. The war ended 15 years ago. But for them, it never ended. Would never end. Meanwhile, in space near Creathian territory, a human exploration vessel completed its survey. The ship was called the Defiant. Appropriate name. It carried a crew of 200 scientists and 50 military personnel. The commander was Colonel Jiho Park. Older now. Gray hair, scarred face, but same determined eyes. He stood on the bridge looking at the star charts showing Creathian space. His crew asked if they would encounter Creathian forces. Park said probably. The aliens were paranoid, scared. They would be watching. One of his officers asked if they should prepare for combat. Park said no. They were explorers, scientists, not invaders. Humanity learned from the war, learned that conquest bred resistance, that fear bred hatred. But he also said they were ready if attacked. The Defiant carried weapons. Advanced weapons. Human engineering had 15 years to develop new technologies, new strategies, new ways to fight. Park recorded a log entry. He said humanity was entering the galaxy not as conquerors but as survivors. They sought knowledge, trade, peaceful contact. But they also carried a message. The message was simple. Earth remembered. Humanity remembered. They remembered the invasion, the deaths, the terror, and they would never let it happen again. Any species that threatened humanity would face something worse than war. They would face a people who learned that survival meant being willing to burn the galaxy rather than accept subjugation. Park finished his log. He ordered the ship to continue exploration, to map systems, to search for other civilizations, to represent humanity in the cosmos, but everyone on board knew the truth. They were not just explorers. They were a warning, a demonstration, a message written in starship hulls and weapon systems. The message said, "We are here. We are strong. We remember, and we will never kneel again." In his medical room, Varix woke from another nightmare, screaming, shaking. The nurses rushed in, gave him medicine, tried to calm him, but nothing helped. He saw human faces in every shadow, heard human voices in every sound, felt human presence in every moment. The war destroyed his body, broke his mind, stole his future, but worse than that, it stole his peace. He would spend the rest of his life knowing humans were out there, growing, expanding, remembering, and maybe someday, coming back. The Creathian Empire once conquered 17 species. Now they lived in fear of one. The species they thought was weak, primitive, easy to defeat. They learned the truth too late. Humans were not warriors. Humans were not conquerors. Humans were something the galaxy had never encountered before. They were survivors, and survival was not about being strong. It was about being willing to do anything. Sacrifice anything, become anything. Varix faced humans once, and now, 15 years later, he still feared them, would always fear them, even in sleep, because he knew the truth that High Command was only beginning to understand. The war never ended. It just paused, and when it continued, the Creathian Empire would not survive. Humanity made sure of that.